welcome to the Town of Milton Warrant Committee on January 18th, 2023. Karen, would you please conduct our roll call of attendance?
Dave?
Thank you. Here.
Emily? Here. Oh, Henny is not here. Stephen Geister?
Yes.
Kristen? Is
Here.
Zoom.
Lorraine?
Here.
Thomas?
Here.
Lori Conley?
Here.
Allison?
Here.
Dream is not here. Amanda?
Here.
Judith is not here. Stephen Rhines? And Jay Funley.
Hello.
Did she call you?
Oh.
JJ O'Connor's here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I can't read the names. Who are the B in the town of Milton? Are they
One
not?
is the room for
Okay.
the feed, and one is me
Okay.
for the webinar. So we have 11 people.
Great. Thank you. I declare a quorum. Should we just go to Article 3? Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Yeah. Let's go right to it. The main thing that we had scheduled for tonight is our discussion of Article 3, the proposed purchase of the property in the vicinity of Fontbonne Academy. We've got Sean O'Rourke, the chairman of the school building committee, who has an update for us. Mr. O'Rourke, why don't you please come and join us?
Sure. So update so far is for a response from the realtor as far as the price. In talking to the town administrator, they haven't come to a price yet. So that's one thing I wanted to share. Last week, we did talk with DRA that's doing the conceptual study for us to go over some dates. They're going to be presenting at the school building committee meeting on the 30th of their essentially conceptual design and the findings that they're finding there. Follow up to a couple of the questions Mr. O'Connor presented last time in regards to timelines for construction. I think last time I talked, Fontbonne was a 2-year construction timeline, and Gow Road was a 4-year one. Talking to some other construction professionals, they're both about 2 years. So Fontbonne will be 2 years, a little less, call it 2 minus. Gow Road, 2 years plus. Mainly what happens is, for larger construction projects like Gow Road would be, you just crew it differently, so you basically arrive at the same timeline of it. The other one that was kind of outstanding, again from Mr. O'Connor, was demolition of the building. Demolition cost is about $350,000 to $400,000 to demolish the existing building that's there for Fontbonne. And that's my update.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. O'Rourke?
Yeah, I've got a. So the architect you said is going to be presenting to you on January 31st-ish?
January 30th, Monday, January 30th.
Okay. Do you know what that will include? Like, specifically, will it include anything, any form of cost estimate?
As I mentioned before, they're trying to do an order of magnitude cost estimate, so it truly won't be like a breakdown of everything.
That's fine.
But there will be some talk of cost estimate there. When I did talk to them and the other professionals I talked to too, they want to weigh the options of, what we've talked about of addition and renovation as compared to a full tear down and reconstruction of another. So I'm hoping to have costs against the two of them so we can look at those also.
Okay.
When you say demo, you take it down to the ground and rebuild it?
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask another question? I feel like we have to turn over every stone if we're going to make.
Please go ahead.
One big downside I'm concerned about is any environmental costs, whether that's asbestos, whether that's an oil tank that's been leaking into the ground. When will we know? Like, I mean, if you buy a house, you get that checked out before you buy it. When will we know?
So the first response we got to the RFP, which was, I think, a template that Laboret used, it basically had, after the purchase and sale, a timeline for inspections, and it basically allows, after that inspection, allows you a way to back out of the deal. Now, that was the original template that was submitted by Laboret as their right of first offer. I'm not sure what our proposal was back to them, because I wasn't involved in that. The town
Okay.
administrator was, but I'm assuming there's similar language in there. In regards to the analysis that we're doing, as I mentioned last time, the feasibility study that DRA is doing isn't including a hazmat analysis.
All right, is not.
I was at the Realtor's office today securing all the old historical drawings that come out in the car if you want to see them. They, from what I could tell on the site, there are 2 underground oil tanks, not massive, but they are adjacent to the property.
Okay. I guess, I don't mean to does somebody else have a
Please.
question? As I haven't been shy about saying in the past couple of meetings, I think the Gow Road option is great. And then when you say tonight, they both take, once they get approved, which lots of hurdles to getting Gow Road approved, I agree. Once they get approved, they take almost the same amount of time. That really makes me yearn for the Gow Road option even more. So I guess my question to you is the land swap on the town meeting agenda for the annual town meeting? Okay.
Yes, so for the annual town meeting, as I've always said, we're doing this in parallel paths.
Okay.
So we have Fontbonne teed up and ready to go for February right now.
Okay.
We had to, in the event that Fontbonne doesn't pass, have that as a fallback plan.
Okay.
So in May, we have an article in there right now. If Fontbonne were to pass this town meeting and then pass the debt exclusion,
Mhm.
meaning it's funded and ready
Okay.
to go, we would pull that article back.
You would?
That's our intent.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
He said it's 7:07 on January 18th, 2023. Thank you. Are there any other questions? We've got Mr. O'Rourke here.
Judy has a question.
Judy?
Steve's on too, I don't know if that can make people in favor, so.
Judy, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I apologize, Mr. O'Rourke, if I'm going to be repeating a question because I was a few minutes late to the ballgame here. Saw an article in the Patriot Ledger that mentioned the appraisal price is higher than what you're proposing as the most likely purchase price, around 8.5 million. And was that an appraisal that you ordered, the town ordered, or was that an appraisal done by Fontbonne?
So the asking price or the listing price that they had advertised for the property was $8.5 million. There was an independent appraisal done by Laboret as part of
Laboret, okay.
Yep, as part of their due diligence when they were looking at the property. I believe it came in at $8 million. The town is, with the select board, is working on doing their own appraisal.
Okay.
What that cost is right now, I don't know. I don't believe it's happened. In regards to our asking price, we haven't talked about that yet, mainly because it's been an executive session issue.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's my understanding, and I could be completely wrong here, that you're not going to have figures. You indicated you're not going to have figures on Friday. Would that figure that's due on Friday be the agreement that you and Laboret have reached, the town and Laboret have reached as a productive purchase price?
Just clarification, we wouldn't be working with Laboret on any purchase price.
Well, okay, so you have to tell them what you're willing to pay, or the town. I use you incorrectly, but of course, by you, I'm saying the town.
Yep, understood. It's.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, in regards to the transaction details, I get nervous talking about it because I'm not as in-depth in it as Mr. Milano.
Okay.
My understanding is we're working to try to come to a purchase and sale agreement at a specific price. Once that price is reached or is there, Laboret has the right of first refusal, so I'm assuming that offer would be presented to them, in which case there would be a timeline for them to respond. And then if they don't respond within that timeline or they decline, then we would be able to purchase the property. That's my understanding of it, but.
Okay, do you have a backup plan on the Laboret having first right of refusal? Do you think that, well, we just kind of went through a hot real estate market, and having witnessed that there was a bidding frenzy on most properties that was flying by the minutes, you know, I'll give you 10, no, I'll give you 20, I'll give you 30. Do you think the town has an option to outbid Laboret?
And that end, I would definitely can't answer.
Okay.
That's outside of the school building committee. You know, that is kind of aligned with the select board and the town administrator right now.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Do you have a cost comparison between Guile and Fonfon?
Not yet, because with Fonfon, we don't know the true program yet. Guile Road, we have rough cost estimates on there.
Like what's a rough for Guile? Just,
$80 to $90 million.
Okay.
And that's based.
was that like, how long do you, because now obviously with the inflation.
It took into some of it. We're utilizing some of the higher cost. And when you look at the costs right now for a school building, if you go to MSBA's website, they actually advertise all the construction costs right now. And they're skewed because you get some of them, like Josiah Quincy School, who's going up next to the Mass Pike, is $1,000 a square foot. We don't think we're going to be that dense of an area or that type of a construction thing. But, you know, for rough high numbers, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay.
Yep.
So I know when we spoke earlier, the thought was if you, and if I'm remembering correctly, there isn't a scenario where you would have both in front of town meeting, because what I think.
Well, the original intent was to have both of them at this town meeting.
Okay.
So our goal, and I didn't know the best way of how we would execute this, of having both of them there at the same time. With the documentation we were trying to get from the engineers for Guile Road, it lagged. So that's why we had to push it to May. So what that did is, it put Fonfon up first. So right now, with us, our focus is 100% on Fonfon. Mainly because it's the first option that's there, and you know, logically when we're looking at it, you know, it's a little more, I've been using the word attainable, because it's a lower cost and a faster timeline. You know, but if you look at, I mean, if we can purchase the property, come to an agreement on it, get the funding set up, we own it, right? The Guile Road property, there's a number of other hurdles that we have to go through to get it. We still think we can get pretty positive on that.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little longer of a timeline to get that property there. So as we're doing it, that's why we looked at Fonfon. You know, right now, we've been saying for the entire time, you know, as Mr. O'Connor mentioned before, is, you know, others have said, you know, show them a different option and we would chase it. And that's kind of what we're doing here. If we didn't go full in on this, I think it would hurt our chances with Guile Road.
So, I guess the only reason I'm asking is that, and I know there was a conversation about like sort of one cannibalizing another. It's sort of you wind up with nothing. You could conceivably, if they both went, winding up with nothing. But is there a scenario where they are both in front, like, is that something you would put in front of the town as opposed to do you know what it is, people weighing the options as opposed to?
You mean picking one versus
In
the
a
other?
way, I mean, I know they're both cost things, but I just think from the standpoint, they both have pluses and minuses, right? And I know the way it's been positioned, sort of Guile Road solves a lot more problems. It's, and longer term, this is a more immediate solution, but then we still have to think about what's next afterwards. And so I guess that's the question. And I don't know how I've never seen a scenario like that where because there would just be so much involved in that, and I don't know how a vote like that would take place. But it's just, I think that's the difficulty. Also knowing that they are on parallel paths, how do you weigh that?
Yeah, so part of it, the way we've been weighing it as we've been discussing it is, if we can execute Fontbonne properly, or the Fontbonne Common properly, we address the elementary school overcrowding that's there, and then the middle school is the only remaining option that's, we agree we have to look at.
Right.
But what happens is by doing Fontbonne in a shorter timeline, it buys us time to kind of look at some things a little bit, and addresses a portion, it's about 55% of like the student population that's experiencing the overcrowding, and address that. Whereas, as you mentioned, if, for whatever reason, if we hypothetically passed on Fontbonne, which we're not, and went all in on Guile Road, there might be negativity looked at us in that way. Putting them both up against each other, the problem is you need a 2/3 majority on either one of them.
Right.
So, those people in the middle, they might go for one, they might not go for the other, you'll never get you 2/3. And that's my point, or the term I've used of them cannibalizing each other.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just frustrating that the town or town meeting or us, we don't get to look at two options and say, this is the better option. We have one option in front of us, and a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush or something.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. I mean, just because it's frustrating, maybe that's life. But
I wish it was a binary decision like that. Like I said, it's multivariate calculus. There's a lot of different variables going into it, and trying to weigh them all out. I think if they went in front of each other and we had to fight it out, if they were both on the same warrant, it might be confusing for people too.
yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Having Fontbonne first and 100% focused on that. When we start talking construction numbers and stuff that's going on, people get confused, especially when we start comparing the two of them. So, for us right now, we're looking at Fontbonne. The article before us right now is to just purchase the property, right?
Okay.
What comes after that, whether we tear it down, whether we add on to it or something like that, that's kind of the work we're going to be doing. And there's multiple steps right now. We're going forward in February for the special town meeting. After that's passed, the debt exclusion in April to fund it, the purchase of it. And then we're looking for, there's another article you guys will have in front of you for May, for funding for us to basically design Fontbonne, because the stuff that's going on with DRA over the next month is just conceptual, it's not full design.
But I guess that makes me a little frustrated, and then maybe there's only so much we can ask of you, but when you said if this passes, we'll pull the land swap, I mean, we're gonna still have issues. I would love to see if Fontbonne passes, for at least the land swap to go in front of town meeting for a yes or no. That way, if 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we've got the MBTA zoning act, we've got a growing town, we'd at least have the option of building a middle school there, so.
We'll all be broke.
This isn't a discussion on the land swap going up, this is about us purchasing Fontbonne.
I know,
So
I'm
we
sorry.
go around, yeah,
I'm sorry.
I just don't wanna go around and talk about the land swap, this is for us.
You're correct.
Yeah, and then we can talk about design costs and all that, because we got a lot of things that will be on the table, especially with the amount of money that we'll be doing,
And another firehouse.
and another time, and an operating override.
Thank you.
I think the other thing that goes along with what you just said too, Allison, is you mentioned before that, like, I mean, let's say something else worked out. Like, this property could be used for other,
Yeah.
like, there are
Right,
other
right.
things it could be put to, so even if, again, like mostly putting the land swap aside, but let's say that got approved and actually things move forward, then this could be used for something else. And I think the issue with this land is if we don't go now, there is no later, because it's not something that we own like the other land.
And there is no land in the town.
Yeah, there's nothing.
We're out of options.
Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
Okay, so on to the discussion of Article 3. We've talked about this at a couple other meetings.
Dave,
Yes, Judy?
I'm so sorry. Can we pull Mr. O'Rourke back just for one quick second?
Sure.
I know it must be hard to see my little friend.
Judy, you are recognized.
Oh, thank you so much. Mr. O'Rourke, you know, I have this Patriot Ledger article up on the other computer, and I'll tell you, they did a good job of confusing me. For the February meeting, the only thing we're gonna do is say yes or no, whichever way, about purchasing from them. The debt exclusion will be for another time and another discussion and another vote. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Dave.
Happy to be of service. Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke. All right. Right. Okay, so, right, Article 3. So what we have is the articles to see if the town will authorize the purchase. We've talked about this. This is the third meeting at length. It's good. But we don't have the price. We don't have it. So this puts us in a bit of a quandary. Price being important. Because the price could decide, you know, so we have a range, we have an idea, but we don't have it. So we have some options. So we need to do something. Okay, the Warrant Committee, we are required by the bylaws to, you know, address the articles which we have, you know, to discuss them and then to give a recommendation. In an ideal world, you know, we vote yes or no. In some occasions, we have been unable to give a recommendation because of circumstances. You know, one might think that our inability to weigh a very material, a characteristic of this article is price, makes it difficult for us to do that. So this is what I think our options are, and I'm open for discussion. And if there are other alternatives, one is a yes. We can vote yes, which would be essentially, we've called it a blank check. You know, we could put language in there. We could, you know, finesse it. Which is basically whatever it takes, get it. We could vote no, which is the opposite of that. You know, yes is I don't care what it costs, buy it. No is I don't care what it costs, don't buy it. Or we could vote no recommendation, like at this time. Either which way we roll, we have to provide the warrant, the town, with a comment. So if we voted like, yes, I don't care what it costs, buy it, we'd write a comment saying, you know, all these things in favor. If we wrote no, same thing. We're against this for X, Y, Z. If we voted no recommendation at this time, we could, you know, lay out some of these facts and circumstances. I would open this up for its discussion. We've talked about how we could draft a comment along the lines of the comments that I made to the select board when they were here before, that it seemed like the general sense of the committee was favorable towards the purchase. However, you know, we cannot vote yes at this time without a price. I think people would understand where we're coming from. And then, so that's what I see as the three main options. Yes, no, no recommendation. We can put thought into the comment to explain it to be as helpful as a town as we can. And then, you know, outside of all of that, I believe that we would anticipate meeting in the future when we have the number between now and town meeting. And one would be hopeful that we would have that number prior to February 13th, which would be the night of the special town meeting when ultimately the decision is made by the town. Steve?
And we would also have, on the 30th, we would have an input from the engineering firm, kind of a sense of, you know, what to scope potentially. So I think that, to me, is very important.
Right, because it's true, like, you know, we discussed about, like, there are a lot of costs downstream to us that, like, it's true, right now we're focused on the purchase of the land. However, the purchase of the land would be a major commitment to a major project that is going to have major costs. So it's true. You know, we'd have a better idea that could be important to people's comfort zone with the overall.
And could we vote at town meeting as a group and give our recommendation at that point once we've got these other data points in?
So I would be hopeful that when we have the number, if we felt comfortable when we had the number, that we could do a vote on the article, that we could go into the town meeting with a new vote, and that because our meetings are public, they're covered through the Milton Access Television and through the podcast that Jay have set up for us. And I'm sure that, you know, the Facebook would not miss this, right? So I'm sure that if, you know, there would be ways of getting, you know, our recommendation public prior to town meeting, then, you know, not wanting to speak for the town moderator, but I would expect that if we walked in, if we walked in with a recommendation following you know, a warrant that was printed with no recommendation, we're punting, right? Like that, if we did have a vote and a yes or a no to address town meeting formally under those circumstances to detail, you know, what our recommendation was and our reasoning.
And we could write that in the comment too, that we weren't ready to vote just because we didn't have the purchase price, we didn't have preliminary information from the engineers.
We could write that in our comment now.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right, and also is in the warrant, you know, as chair, I write a
Right. Yep.
a letter. So I would be prepared in my letter as chair speaking for us, you know, the reasoning, the thought process behind what we did, asking for patience, you know, but, you know, I think that as representatives of town meeting, you know, we're our own little mini town meeting here. I think that the town meeting members would understand our hesitancy to pull the trigger on a multi-year, multi-million-dollar commitment like this without something as fundamental as price. But you never know.
And there is this misconception, I feel like, of what it's gonna cost for the town. Like, and so I've seen people write, like, it's only 75 to 100. Well, no, like, that's not a one-time fee. So I just want that to be very clear to people, because there is this, I've been hearing around town, this misconception of, really, this cost is for this, just to buy this property. It doesn't include renovating, because that has gone out there, that it's not it's including renovating, not at all. So I just wanted to bring that point up.
Or hiring teachers or janitors or anything else you need to support in the building, so.
Yeah, so I think,
I think the teacher numbers would stay the same because it's just moving.
O'Henny has his hand up. O'Henny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we beginning our discussion?
Yes.
A venture, a comment or two. Thank you very much. And forgive me, I'm late to dinner tonight. Not a good night, so I need the work committee to be on my side because I got people over here. So two thoughts. One is that we have this in front of us, and we need to, as Dave said, the three options are perfectly good options that we've all taken, or we've taken before, the one committee, short time I've been here, all three options have been employed. I want to talk a minute about and challenge us as a body as to why we are asking the town to behave in a way that none of us would behave if this were our money in our situation. Okay? If this were our money, and you had to get into town because your kid needs to go to school there, or your mother lived up the street, and you had an option in front of you, an option that you knew you could build on and we have today. Number one, no one on this committee would say, I'm not going to look at that option because we haven't set the price yet. Everyone on this committee would say, you know, I need to be near my mother, let me buy that thing, let me at least throw my hat in the ring and do everything I can to secure that because it's available today. Because we know the town of this land. Any of you can sell and put your house on the market. And we know the value of land in this place. It will be gone. No questions asked. God is not making more land. And we know that the kids are not disappearing from our schools. And that's my second point. The challenge that we have is not downstream, it's not next week, it's right now with the challenge in the schools and the population. And so time is of essence to this argument. Time is something to consider. Number three, fiscal responsibility. What has gotten cheaper the longer you waited for? You tell me, what has gotten cheaper? What has gone down in price? May I suggest that the answer is nothing. If we kick the can, we also defer fiscal responsibility to the town to take that our number one job to make sure they get the best possible. There is no argument that can be made that kicking the can down the stream will end up with the town saving money. It won't. It's not, it's just, we're going against economics here. And we all have to face that fact. Now, I know that, you know, two options are better than one, we can consider all the options. But we have a decision to make about authorizing our select board, which I remind us is an elected body by the people who can be held accountable for their decision. If they spend a bunch of money, they can be held accountable. We, an appointed board, in this case, I'm recommending we trust our elected board to make a wise decision as far as price. I know this is not going to be popular, but it is my recommendation that we vote yes, and we vote yes for an uncapped option, simply because of the three options: the economics, the prices, the time. We're a fiscal team. Let's do the best fiscal thing for us. Thank you, members, for your time. I don't want to start an argument. That's where I am.
Thank you, O'Henny. Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, so I would never buy a piece of property not knowing the price. Maybe you get a lot more money than I do, but I just don't go out there and just start spending money. So it's just one point. And I don't think if we vote option 3, we're saying no. We're just saying we need a little more information. Once we have that information prior to town meeting, we can make a recommendation, or Dave can make a recommendation at town meeting what the warrant committee wants to do. And we can vote either an hour before like we did in the past, or whatever it needs to be. So I don't feel comfortable saying yes right now.
Okay.
Too many unknowns.
So Jay was first.
Oh, we're
Unless
close.
you can
get
hand it over.
Okay, I would say, thank you both of you for sharing your thoughts. I would say that if this committee is inclined to support this, which I think we are, even me, you've all heard me whine and complain, but I'm not a child, and just because it's not my favorite option, I think it's a good option. So if I'm right that the committee is inclined to support this, then what will really happen is we will really get a price sometime between now and February 13th, and we will meet and we will vote yes or no. So then the question is, what do we print in the warrant before then? And if the no option, if voting no tonight is off the table, which I think it is, but I'm not sure, then the question is, do we print no recommendation? As our chair said, there are two options: the no recommendation option or the blank check option. I would rather make a recommendation. I'd rather tell the whole town in the printed warrant, here's where we're leaning, here's where we're going, even if we're going to have to take a second look at it once the price is set. So I don't love the no recommendation option. The blank check option, I also don't totally love. I thought things like, well, what blank can we put in here? There's a blank spot with $1. Can we say we approve $8.5 million? Can we say we approve $8 million? Well, if we do that, are we undercutting the negotiations that are going on right now? So I would propose, and unless everyone yells at me, I will even make this a motion, that we vote yes, and we fill in this blank, and we fill in the blank that has the dollar sign with the number $1 million. Not because I think we're going to buy it for $1 million, but because if we do that, we're not undercutting the negotiations. I don't think it's going to be less than $1 million. But we are stating clearly to the town, if the price is right, we like this option. It's a clearer statement to the town than no recommendation. I'm not, maybe I won't die on this hill. It's just what I think is the best idea right now for what we print in the warrant. Food for thought.
JJ.
I was just wondering about, just because the negotiations are going so long, the town meeting cannot vote unless they have a price, right? Just want to make sure that makes sense. So we are going, if we go with option 3, which is no recommendation, we are going to be able to get a price and vote before. That's pretty guaranteed, right?
I don't want to use the word guarantee. We are very hopeful that they're at a place in their negotiations where they could have a number soon. One is very hopeful that soon would be before February 13th. So one way of structuring the 3 option is say no recommendation because we don't want to say yes or no to this project with what we have. In our comment, we could say, that being said, it is the sense of our deliberations that the Warrant Committee is, tending towards a yes. We could even say strongly tending towards a yes. We can put all of our cards on the table, basically, right? And just say, this is the direction that we're going. But under the circumstances, we do not feel, wherever we come out on this, we don't feel comfortable pulling the trigger on a yes commit without that, right? And then, and we're not giving anything away. We've been saying on the record that we would anticipate having meetings at such time as we get the price. We were hopeful that we would have one today. We had tentatively scheduled a meeting for tomorrow night to be able to have a meeting at the very last moment we possibly could, knowing that our deadline is Friday for the warrant, right? So we've been prepared to be able to make this decision at the last possible minute that we possibly could. And so then we found out late last night, in an early evening, we were given an update that we weren't going to get it. So here we are, right? So we're ready to, you know, we're the Warrant Committee, we're open, we're ready to do business. And just to reiterate, so that was the question that I asked Nick, town moderator, when we were here before, is that they're vested with the authority to sign that PNS. They're not waiting on us to tell them it's okay. Is that they sign conditional upon, approval by, and we're part of the approval by. So we're not holding them up. And so, you know, we're part of that process, is that we're part of the condition upon approval by town meeting. We're the Warrant Committee. We are, you know, representatives of town meeting at this stage. So.
I have a question to that.
Yes.
So, the way that this is written right now, obviously there's no cost in there. So say they came back, I'm just gonna say it came back at $12 million. Is there, right now, the discussion is around yes or no when we get a cost, thinking that, I think everybody has probably a number or a range in their head, but then what happens if it's more than some of us had anticipated? So then where does that vote come? So then that vote, we all say we're leaning, you know, the way that we've been talking about it is the Warrant Committee is leaning towards yes. But then say, right prior to the town meeting, it comes in at whatever that number is, then we vote again? Is that how, well, like, how does that work then if we have a number?
So right now,
Right.
like, what I think we could foresee, hopefully, we get a number. And that's gonna be the number that's gonna go on the PNS. That's gonna be pretty firm for that part. There's other pieces floating around out there about architecture and, right? But that's a contract, right? So I would hope that once we get that firm number on the, you know, if people have signed on the line that is dotted, that number's not gonna move too much. It being a PNS, you know, a contract, right? So I would be hopeful that we would be able to go in and vote yes or no to a number, and then that number goes to the town at the town meeting. And you know, that will be the big reveal, right? Because we're all have our little mental figure of what it's going to be, a range. And you're absolutely right. What happens if it comes in, and because these negotiations are all confidential.
Right.
Steve?
And you will have the opportunity to do a little PowerPoint or a little presentation on what we voted for just prior to, maybe it's right before the meeting, like you did it the last time, and you got up and you kind of gave our position because we weren't quite there. And so I assume you'll have that. Margaret will allow that.
I would hope so. And then again, like I am hopeful that we get the number sooner rather than later, and so that there's plenty of time for that to get out to the townspeople. It could be, we could put it up on the town web page. You know, I'm sure that the Facebook would be helpful, right? Like, this is not going to be a deep, dark secret. That number is not going to be a deep, dark secret. Everybody's going to know what that number is when that number comes. And
if we get it soon enough, we get it in Milton Times too.
Front page.
oh my goodness gracious, sure. No, I mean, because that's going to be, you know, it's right, because we are talking about the building of a school, right? And so whenever you start talking about the building of a school, that's a front page Milton Times discussion. So, you know, the purposes of, you know, all these deadlines, it's for public notice. It's so that the public is aware of what we're up to, right? You know, we owe the town, you know, our position on this. somebody brought up, like how would we conduct ourselves in our lives? Many people in the town have been through the purchase and sale of a home, are familiar with the process, are familiar with what a PNS is. I'm hopeful that, they would show some patience with us if we, wanted to take a little time, especially, when we would not be holding the process up if we proceeded this way.
I think that's the important thing for me, is that our vote tonight isn't holding anything up. That it's still moving ahead, all of the steps are still being taken, it's just.
Right. And so we can still, and we'll get to you in a second, Judy, and we can still, do our job, do our due diligence. We can be fast when we need to, but be slow when we have to. We as a team have done a pretty good job of being able to be flexible with the scheduling and make ourselves available so that we can, be there at the last minute. I don't have a problem with the last minute. The last minute is the last minute. It's 2 minutes before 1 minute too late. So if the last minute is the last minute, so we're being good at being there, but so we can go fast when, but when we have to slow it down and take the time, we can do that too. Judy.
Okay, so a thought came to me. Would it be helpful or not to sort of have a mini discussion about pricing, as in, nope, I'm not paying a dime more than $5 billion for that car, which we all know falls apart sometimes because of the reality that, well, we really need to have this car. Would it be helpful if we kind of talked about where we would find our ceiling now, rather than just sort of have an idea that when the figures do come in?
It looks like Lori has something to add.
Shop?
I would just ask if the select board is in executive session discussing price, would we want to be in open session discussing price?
Right. So my sense of that, and this is just to be involved in the conversation, right? Is that that's their job. We're all in our lanes. Mm-hmm. We're the warrant committee. We're doing our lane. We do our job. My take on it is they do their job. They come to us with what their work product is, right? What the results of their work is. They come to us, and then we look at it and we determine whether we approve or not, based upon our discussion that we have. But it's relevant to like Jay's point, which was that is an option, right? If we went with sort of like the yes option, where we came up with guidance, we probably we'd have to discuss the money if we went with that one option. And that's more of a technical language thing, maybe. Is that I think what Jay's talking about is like giving a number that gives lots of leeway, that's just to show our intent. But I think that, what I would add to the conversation would be is that we let them do their job. O'Henny has his hand up, and then I see Jareem as well. O'Henny?
Jareem has not spoken, so I kind of refer to him, and then I can go second.
Very good. Jareem.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So we've been talking back and forth about this subject, and the concern I'm seeing is, not really if this purchase is a good or bad idea. It sort of revolves around money, and as Dave has understood, the fact is that we're not really decision makers in terms of price. We're not in that process. But what Dave's saying, does it ring bells to you? Does anybody realize that fact, or is it a fact? I mean, we're talking about making a decision where most of us are probably leaning towards this purchase regardless, right? But we're worried about, concerned about money. Do we have a number that we are aligned, that we want to cross? How do we express, are we taking on more than what we should be in terms of this money? Because the other parts of this process, I mean, these people are responsible, right? They're financially, they have some fiduciary responsibility, and they've been sort of doing this the whole time. So how much do we want to focus on this balance or this cost when we have people who are pretty much in the position to do what they're supposed to do? What part of this idea is a bad idea, and leaving them up to deciding, or negotiating what the cost would be? And then to kind of O'Henny's point, listen, it's like Bitcoin or stock market or anything like that. In our case, we are pretty much guaranteed that anything that we purchase in this town or are responsible for, or the value or whatever is going to appreciate. So if they don't do nothing with this property, they can sell it, rent it, lease it, do whatever. You know what I mean? And they'll go with the other options, regardless of sort of how much it costs. I mean, yeah, millions of dollars, right? What's the difference between 10 and 11 million, right? It's probably going to be, negotiated within, some constraints, and I feel like, we might be focusing too much on this, this balance. I mean, we could just make, like you guys were saying, if we make a suggestion, or we make a decision, we could attach something to it that suggests. But how much does that really? Well, how much does that really weigh on the negotiation? When it comes to it, because we're not a part of that. And so I just wanted to make that comment, and for people to sort of think about, how hard we're really looking at this, and what relevance our suggestion for numbers might or might not be, because we could throw a number out there, right? But does that say they're going to stay within the constraints of that line? We don't know how they're going. We don't know who's negotiating, what the negotiation is about, et cetera, et cetera. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there for you guys. That's it. I don't know if it makes sense to you guys, but I'm glad.
O'Henny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and fellow members. Member Langley, I appreciate your kind words. I agree with most of what you said, especially the part where you complimented me. Those are right on point. But the parts I want to challenge are that I think it does matter. I think the chair is right about the matters, and here's why. I'm going to take it back to the same thing I said. Once again, that we're acting the town, and we're asking front bonds to behave in a way we would never behave. This is public hearing, this is public record. If you told me that I had one buyer who had an approval from the family, the bank, and everything to go for it, I had another buyer who had to go before a committee that has proven to take time after time, months to sell this, which one would you go with? They're selling it because they need money. And we are sitting here today with an opportunity to empower our town to lay hold of a resource that, as you mentioned, Jareed, tell any developer that plot of land sitting in the middle of Milton, right square, you know what it is, that go between the two sides, it's open, and see how long it lasts. If we sit here and we handcuff our town with a price, do you think it's in Farm Bond's interest? I know they're people of God, to come and wait for us to have to negotiate again and meet and get our schedules and post our meetings? No, it's not. We have an opportunity to handicap our town in the negotiations. And we have an opportunity to empower them to get this land I think, I don't see that we have a choice in the sense of if we want to do our fiduciary responsibility to enable this town to get it at the best price possible. We need to make sure we don't do anything to harm that. And I ask us to keep that in mind and vote yes, with no cap again, for this case. Thank you, members. Appreciate your time.
Jay?
May I speak? I said if I didn't hear a raucous outcry, I was going to make a motion, so I would like to make a motion. I would like to move that we take the recommendation as is printed and which was shared with us, and that we fill in the blank when it says for the town appropriate an amount not to exceed, we fill in that blank with $1 million. I've heard strong feelings that, we should do whatever the select board approves. I've also heard strong feelings that we're worried that the price may come in too high. No matter what happens, we're going to be talking about this in a couple weeks and re-voting. So, am I supposed to shut up after I make a motion? I'll shut up.
Can we discuss that?
I think the first is a seconded. There's a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I will second pending an explanation again for those of us who are not as smart as Jay. I'm the one, I still don't understand, so please.
So that's a seconded.
With an explanation.
That's
And
not
then-
really,
so
is
then-
that a really an
Oh my
second?
goodness gracious.
Yeah, it's got a condition on that second.
I rule that is a second.
All right.
It sounds to me like he's seconding the motion in order to have further discussion and explanation of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, I see hands.
So, I am because the word previous to it it says not to exceed $1 million.
Yeah.
So then I think that's very confusing, because we're saying
Perhaps it is.
we're approving, but then we're putting, it almost seems like
Negative.
like a.
It's a cap.
Okay.
That's, the million is a cap, so I don't know what that buys us.
Okay. Can I? Yeah. Can I say what I'm thinking? So I think no matter what, we're going to be meeting again, and we're going to be voting again on a new number. What I want to do tonight is convey clearly the state of the board, but without handcuffing the select board and negotiating the price, and without committing us to anything. Like you said, you're worried about a $12 million price.
But I just threw out a number.
Yeah. So if we say not to exceed $1 million, we're going to be re-voting on this. We're going to be.
But we're not in the process, it's not our job. Our job is to give an opinion of what comes from the selectmen or the planning board or the school board. It's our job to give a comment on that. It's not our job to dictate numbers. That's not what the Warrant Committee does.
Well, we've got to give.
No, we don't.
We've got to, well, I would be embarrassed to not give a recommendation. Doesn't mean that's the end of the world. Sorry, I'll shut up.
Well, hold on. You don't.
Okay.
Just cut yourself up. Say,
Okay.
I try to finish
Yeah.
the thought, Jay.
I'd like to give a clear recommendation. I'd like to tell the town, here's where we stand as a warrant committee. I think we're leaning towards yes. I may be reading the room wrong, but I think we're leaning towards yes. If we come back with no recommendation, they'll have to read all of our comments to get to the fact that we're leaning towards yes. If we put a yes right at the top, they understand that. Okay, so if we put a yes right at the top, then what do? Do we say blank check like O'Henny suggested? Do we say $8.5 million? Do we say $8 million? Do we say 7.5? Do we say 12? I don't know. The fact that I say $1 million, and you're right, it is confusing. Does that mean we're only approving $1 million? No, it just means that right now, tonight, on the 18th of January, we're not ready to say anything over $1 million. We're going to wait and see. If they come back with 8.5, maybe we'll say yes, maybe we'll say no. If they come back with 8, maybe we'll say yes, maybe we'll say no. If they come back with 12, maybe yes, maybe no. I agree it's a little confusing, but I'm open to a better suggestion.
Thank you, Jay. So we have a series of hands that have gone up. Some of them are on the video, some of them are here. I've made a note of them. We'll go in this order. It'll go Steve R., then JJ, then Jareem, then Judy. Okay, Steve R., you haven't spoken yet tonight, so that's why I'm recognizing you first.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. Question, so the asking price is 8.5 million on the property, correct? That's what they're asking for?
Yes.
So, okay, so the confusion for me is twofold. One, putting $1 million in that note is something that it doesn't make sense to me, and maybe there's a better explanation out there. I've also negotiated a fair amount of deals. I would never put no cap or an unlimited number in an offer. It just wouldn't happen. So I think I'm not sure where we're going to go with this. I mean, I'm leaning towards yes too. I agree. The land is an amazing opportunity. And I'm just trying to take in all the conversation that we're having here, and it kind of feels like we're getting closer, but we're still kind of going around in a circle on this, so I apologize.
Thank you, Steve. JJ.
Just to speak to a couple things, but to speak to the motion, I agree with Steve. Like Jay, you're talking about you want to have a positive yes, but then when they go in and they say $1 million and the number comes back at 8 million, they're going to be like, the warrant committee told me $1 million. So it doesn't.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. So, and even if you up the number to 4 or 6, I don't know. At some point, it doesn't make sense. I just don't think the motion makes sense. But just to speak to O'Henny, and I hope you're there, O'Henny. I can't see you. But your concerns about, the alacrity of the situation. 2 weeks ago, I was on board with you, and I made a vehement push to have a blank check yes vote. But Nick Milano, the town administrator, said that we don't need it. And he said, he's going to be in the process of negotiating it. And, I was like, okay. And I asked him twice. I was like, do you need us to prove this? And he said, no, I don't need this. And I think when you talk about competition, Fontbonne is a member of this community. They're going to give us a chance, I think. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, Milton, we're selling it. I mean, I hear you, and we have to trust our town elected officials, Nick Milano, the select board, to go in, and if that happens, to just negotiate. And we're going to have a number. And what I'd like to propose, or not propose, but just discuss is like what Dave was talking about, like just this no recommendation, but we can put a strongly positive comment, and you're a lawyer, right? But I'm married to a lawyer, and we could put something in. We strongly support the purchase of this property at a reasonable number, and the word reasonable means different things to everyone around this table. But we can all agree that the word reasonable is reasonable, and when they come back at 8 million, then we will decide if it's reasonable, or something like that. Anyways, those are my thoughts.
So I'll put you on the list. It's next is Jareem. Jareem, you are recognized.
Thank you. So I agree with what pretty much everyone says, except for the thing is, Jay, I'm falling the sword for you, man, because, you reached out to me and we had our little talk, and, you know what I mean? The bottom line is, though, Jay, this is like one of those things for me personally, right, that I see and I've experienced where, we're supposed to be sort of like this committee and honorable and, steadfast and practical. And what is it going to look like for us to come with $1 million number in any type of note or conveyance to this group who is seriously looking to, take these actions? We're really handcuffing them in that sense, and maybe even making ourselves kind of farcical, you know what I'm saying, in a way. So I feel like if you're going to, put a number in there, don't put $1 million. I mean, I would look at that from their side and be like, what the hell is this? You know what I mean? And being that, what was just said, they don't even really need us, right, in this situation to sort of assert their, execute their plan, right? I feel like, if we're all, or for the most part of most of us are leaning towards yes, I think it needs to be sort of a practical statement, so that they understand sort of that we know what our position is and what our role is in this, as far as, again, money, because we're not making the money until making the decision about or negotiating about price in this room or with Farm Pond or even with them at this point, right? We're not negotiating. So in a sense, it's like, we have to be practical in terms of what we put out there publicly. We can't play games, because I feel like almost that $1 million statement, if we put that out there, it's like playing games. Like if anybody were to read into this, whom were not presented with the options that we had, but got the basic facts, they would say, what the hell are those people doing with that response, with the $1 million cap, if you will? When we're talking $8 million, $9 million, $10 million, or negotiating somewhere in between there, it just doesn't look good, and I don't feel good about it, right? If you were to say something like, 8 million or 9 million, somewhere around, lowball those guys, if that's what we need to do, if that's a message that you want to sort of set, lowball them and give them a cap there and say, this is what we would do, all right. But not, because in a way, that number itself handicaps. It sends a message, and I don't know that the message that you're wanting to send will resonate the way you want. And so I feel like with O'Henny's point, the bottom line is we got them out. So we go in there at 8, 9, 10, 11 million, or even just a kind of a quick deal or what have you, and we have the property and it doesn't do a damn thing. Somebody's gonna go out and get somebody to build on, somebody to buy that property at an exorbitant amount of money, because we know inflation is coming, and we know, what our area's worth is. So that's my piece. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jareem. Judy.
Hi, I think that I would have to be not in favor of putting a $1 million price or any price into our written comment. It hamstrings us, because in the final analysis, if it comes in at $500,000 more than we were comfortable with, or maybe even a whole $1 million, we're still going to weigh the option. Do we need this property to achieve a goal of overcrowding in the school? And it's like any negotiation. People were talking about purchasing their own homes or a car, anything that you purchase. You set a little limit in your head. I think we've all been there. I'm not spending more than this for that. And in the final analysis, you do this cost analysis and say, well, I'm not going to go out and look at 100 more houses to find one $50,000 cheaper when I know I can do this $50,000. I just didn't want to do it. So I am not in favor of putting a price into our comments. I think also the town at this point in time is very committed to acquiring this property. Bear in mind, they have to sell it to every citizen in town. We all have to weigh, as citizens and not just people on a committee, whether we think we got a good value for the purpose we needed it for. So I'm not so much in favor of a, as you would say, blank check of, why settle for the mini mansion when you can get a McMansion because we have a blank check? I think we have to be realistic and understand that it may come down to they cannot let an opportunity slip past us for what, in the end, could be a very wise purchase, even though it was more than what was anticipated to spend. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Judy. Steve?
So I'm just gonna reiterate what I've said a couple times. The warrant committee does not set prices or negotiate contracts or do any of that type of work. Our job is to comment on whatever the warrant is put in front of us. We could say, we don't like that number when we see the number, or we could say, good, the warrant committee agrees that we should acquire this. And it's not up to us to make those decisions. That's not our job. That's not what the warrant committee is here for. It's just a comment on the warrants. We don't write the warrants.
Emily?
Thank you, Dave. And I think following up on that, I think that's a good point. And going back to, I think what Lori said earlier, and I've heard echoed from some others, I just think putting any number interferes with the process, because we put a number that's too high, we don't know what's happening in negotiations. That undermines the process. We go too low, and it looks to them like, oh, like they're not going to be supportive of a reasonable number. I just think anytime we go into that territory, we go to a bad place where we're interfering with the process, and I think undermining the process. So I would feel like, I think the census were generally favorable too. I mean, in my mind, I think in the past there have been some things we've voted on where sometimes like the numbers were coming and people felt pretty strongly, and it was like, well, if it's unreasonable, then we'll vote again. So I would be like, I'm so favorable that I'm like, I would be willing to kind of trust the process and vote in favor, just knowing that like if something came back that was totally unreasonable, I think we'd all be like, let's do this again. I think sorry, I know.
No, I like what you're saying.
And Kristen has her hand up.
Yeah, and I think the one last thing I would just say to close out is that I know with the comment, like, it's my concern about having no recommendation is that sometimes I think there's judgment that comes when we have those moments. And that's why I would be willing to vote in favor of this now and fill in the amount later. And again, like within reason. I think JJ, you pointed out like reasonable price. Like I would be supportive of that. I think otherwise we really need to be careful with the comment to make sure that it's not critical of the process, because I don't know, my perspective is like, I think this is taking time because due diligence is being done, and it makes me actually feel more confident in the process. So I'll just end with that if we need to be really careful, I think, about the comment here.
Thank you. Kristen?
Hi, thank you. I agree with Emily that we have to be very careful in the wording of the comment, and just kind of to go off of I like the way he puts it, that we're
We lost her.
Kristen, can you repeat what you said? Kristen, we missed we missed you. You are muted for a second. Can you start with the point where you said, you like where it's Steve? I think that's what you said last.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, Emily, thank you. I agree that, we have to be careful with the comment. And just commenting on what's presented with this, and I think, this is now the third night that we're discussing it. I think the question has to be, are we comfortable voting on no number? I feel like 2 nights we've said no, and I understand that if we don't have a recommendation in the printed warrant that, we have gotten criticism for that. But this is coming to us very last minute. We've had 3 meetings, we've spent a lot of time debating it. So, I don't necessarily think if that is the way we go. I do think we've done our due diligence and really debated it. And, whatever way we vote tonight, if we do ultimately go no recommendation, I think we've come to that decision very thoughtfully as a community.
Thank you, Kristen. Lorraine, your hand is up.
Thank you. The way I'm looking at this is that we are if we voted yes for the original, as it's written, that we are saying that yes, it is a good idea to buy this property, as we all talked about at all of these meetings, to say all of the reasons of buying a piece of real estate. We have nothing to do with the negotiations. So putting a number down or not putting a number, it doesn't matter. That's not what our role is. That's the select board. And then at the end of the day, we can't forget that this gets presented to the town meeting members, and they are the ones that actually are voting whether or not this gets done. And if the price is given to them by the select board, that seems like it's, you know, out in the world somewhere, then the town meeting members will vote that they don't want this. And that's where the end is. I mean, we could go in and say, yes, we want this, and we're willing to pay this amount of money or put a price on it. That's not what our role is. I mean, I'm reading it myself as that we're saying, yes, we think it's a good idea to buy this piece of property. And then, as we all stated it, they're going to come up with the price because we have nothing to do with that. That price and this amendment goes to the town meeting members, and they're the ones that vote on, does this entire thing get done or not get done, is how I'm kind of seeing it. So having all the discussions about putting $1 million or we shouldn't go farther than that, none of that really matters. That's really not what our role is. We're saying that, yes, we think this is a good idea to buy this piece of property for the purpose it's given, but if that doesn't work out later on, then, it can be sold for something else, because there are all these executive meetings going on of negotiations that we don't have anything. So we can sit here for another hour and go on about whatever dollar amount we want to put in there or not, and at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. And having no recommendation going forward, I don't know that that puts us in a good light, because the basic question is, yes, we think this is a good piece of property to buy. Now give us the next phase, and the select board would come up with a number and go from there, and the town meeting members are the ones that say yes or no at the end of the day. That's it.
Following up.
I'm sorry, I've been at work since 6:30 this morning, so I'm a little tired. So.
Can I follow up
Sure.
on what she just said? I hear that my clever idea of putting in a dummy number of $1 million was not at all a clever idea. Obviously, what I suggested is not going to be approved by the board, and that's fine. Can I amend my own suggestion? I don't know what the process is. I'd like to.
So are you going to withdraw your motion?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion is withdrawn. Would you like to make a new motion?
Yes, that we accept the wording as was laid out for us, and that we change in the middle part where it says, and that the town appropriate, we say, and that the town appropriate a reasonable price negotiated by the select board to pay costs of this acquisition.
Okay. So what was your language?
The town appropriate a reasonable price negotiated by the select board. I think Lorraine hit the nail on the head that, I mean, I feel exactly like Lorraine did. I'd rather make a recommendation tonight than not make one. And yeah, it's not our place to say a number, which I.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table
Tom wanted to say something.
to vote, so I think that is to vote yes. The motion is on the table to vote yes to Article 3. Yes to Article 3. And that in the language would be appropriate a reasonable price to be negotiated by the select board. Is there a second?
Second.
That's seconded. I open the floor to discussion. Tom?
I just want to ask a question. I might have a comment after that. When we talk, it's been mentioned a couple of times now by people who have sat on the committee before, I have, that a no comment puts us in a negative light. I want to understand that more, being a town meeting member for the time I have, what that, because I know what it means. So I just put that question out there, and I think it would help me to follow up comments.
Lorraine, you brought that up in your comment. Would you like to give a further explanation as to that comment?
Me personally, I just feel that the question we're being asked is this a good idea, essentially? Is this a good idea to buy this piece of property? And to me, that's a yes/no question. And that we're making a recommendation. We're not making the decision to do this. And I think if we go back and forth, and we've had these meetings, these 3 meetings, and we come out with, well, we don't have a recommendation. I think that, like, why did it go to the Warrant Committee in the first place? So, because to me, it is more of a basic question of, yes, they should consider buying this piece of property, or no, they should not consider buying this piece of property. As far as the negotiating the price, that is another elected board's role to do that. And that all we're saying is, yes, we think it's a good idea to buy this. So, since we're going around the table and people were saying, you know, I am in favor of it, but this, I am, you know, it's a good idea, and in the future we could, then I don't see why we would go forward with, you know, no decision, you know, no recommendation. I mean, I think we all have. I mean, it sounds like a lot of people are in favor of the basic question of, should we buy this piece of property? And I think that, yeah, I mean, that's all it is. I just think that saying that we have no recommendation, I don't feel that way. I think it's a yes/no question, and that the select board can then come up with the price, and then the town meeting members are the ones that are actually the meeting members. So anyone on the voting team, anyone on the committee here that is a town meeting member, then you can step aside in your other role and say, yes, that's a price I think is worth it as a you know, a town meeting member, or no, I don't. So we're just putting it out there and just saying, here's what it is. Now they're giving you the price. Do you all think that it's a good idea to go forward? That's it.
Thank you.
So if I, Roy, thank you very much. Because I just look at it as, you know, we hear that, you know, we're giving this due process, we're being diligent, we're following up, we're, you know, we are fiduciaries for the town to a degree. But, you know, we're purchasing this piece of property, and we're in favor of that. I think it's very clear. But at what price, right? Isn't that our job? Is to make that recommendation to purchase, yes. But town meeting, we're saying that this is a reasonable price, right? That's our job. I mean, wouldn't that be part of our duty to opine on the price?
As a town meeting member, or
no, just as the committee in the comment, because I think that's going to create a lot of conversation within the town meeting, like, you know, the $1 million, well, what's a blank check, like, what is this, what went into the negotiation? So, like I said, I'm just spitballing in terms of what I would see in terms of us voting yes, but kind of not talking about a price. So that's just kind of going back to, you know, I'm very confident in this process right now. Maybe I'm pie in the sky, but I think this is going to happen. I think it's going to happen on or about the price that the committee's been kind of working for. And there are going to be associated costs, which I think, you know, maybe we have a duty to mention to town meeting too. But from my opinion, like it said, like I'm saying, is that simply a no vote with a strongly worded comment about what we've discussed, that we are in favor. However, we are just waiting for, you know, the select board to just do their job and present us, and then we'll have a bigger comment. I think we're going to be sent back to discuss this at town meeting if there's no price. I think town meeting's going to know how we feel about the price. So I don't necessarily think from my perspective that a no comment is like a death knell for this. I just think we explain it to the town. And I think, you know, I really trust, I could be wrong, but that this is going to go through, that we'll approve it, and then town meeting will accept it. Because I think it's a great move for the town. And I think it addresses, as we've all discussed here, a lot of needs. So I don't know, that's just, that's it.
Lorraine's hand is up again. Lorraine?
Just finishing my thought. I mean, I would have absolutely no idea whether it's a fair price or it's not a fair price, because I don't do that kind of work. I think what's gonna happen is we go forward and we say, yes, this is good to buy, and the select board comes up with a price, and they do all the negotiating, and they present it at the town meeting for the town meeting members to vote on. The justification of that price, whether it's, too high, or why did you pick that, or what's, that is their role to get up and talk about that. You can give me a price of 8 million, or you can give me 10 million or 5 million. I have no idea what that's, so I can't, in this committee, say, oh, we put this price on it because we think that that would be a good price for that piece of property. I think we're just being asked, can we put this forward? And then the select board comes in with the price, and then the town meeting members say, wait, that's way too high, or, yeah, that sounds good, and we go from there. So I just, staying on us trying to figure out what a good price is, I don't know. I don't know people's background and their work environment. I don't know who has the sort of expertise to decide that number, because we don't want, there are negotiations going on in executive session. We don't even know where they're at. We don't even know what the starting point is, or the discussion point. So for us to kind of get stuck on a number, I think, I don't feel that that's the way we should go, so.
Thank you.
And again, the town meeting members on this committee can then vote in their other hat when the meeting happens.
We've got Lori, then Amanda.
So I think, Lorraine, in response to your comment about not knowing the price of the building, I mean, I agree, we don't know, but at the same time, we're also being asked to vote on all of the budgets. And isn't that the same thing? Because we're supposed to look at every single town budget, and I have not seen the town budgets ever, and we're gonna go through this same due diligence process. So I think it's very similar, and I think you're right. The select board's in executive session discussing the price. JJ asked Nick Milano if we are holding up the process. We're not holding up the process. We can say no, I think we should say no recommendation at this time because we don't have all of the facts. And I think it's the way we write the comment. Not that I've experienced at writing the comment, but I think there's got to be a way to write the comment to express what everyone's feeling. And we are letting the select board negotiate, and we probably shouldn't be trying to negotiate it here either, because they're doing it all in executive session. And they'll come up with a number, and if we have time, why wouldn't we just wait? Aren't there additions or green sheets that come in at the 11th hour if something changes? Is that something that happens on the floor?
Yep.
So why can't we bring in a green sheet and say, add this to the warrant? Now this is our vote. It's no longer a no recommendation, but we vote yes, based upon our new information.
Thank you, Amanda. And then JJ.
I have to agree with Judy's comment, I'm not Judy's, Lorraine's comments. I've been all over the place on this, but I think when you think about, I think that she's right, that we are voting on whether or not we agree with the purchase of this. To her point, we're all coming in with our own understanding of pricing, I think that's why I was asking before, if you threw out a number, we're all going to, in our heads, say, well, that seems like too much, or that seems like too little, but it's just based on whatever bit of knowledge that we have. And I think to your question about the budgets, I think I feel like that's different because you're given a budget, there's a starting point. You can say, this is why this is increased from last year, and here's all the background for why. It's sort of not, you kind of are given information, that's the way it just seems different to me. It doesn't seem as, it's not like we're going to have all of the, I think when they come to us, they'll have the rationale. When they have a price, there will be a rationale for how they got there. I mean, we won't go into all the details, but there's a rationale for how you get to the price. There's negotiations. And so not being a part of those negotiations, we just have to assume that they would come with the best price that they were able to get. And then it is up to the town to decide if we agree with that's the price. I think, so I'm going into thinking that that would be the process by which they'd come to it. So I don't know that a number at this point would make a difference to me.
It's JJ then Steve.
So I started out as a blank check guy. And then I was a, hey, no recommendation. And now I'm a yes guy. And the reason why I guess I'm moving is because of various things people are saying. Like Lorraine seems to think that a yes vote, yes recommendation to town meeting carries more weight than a strongly worded, no comments, and, but we all support it. But then Tom, you don't think it's a big deal. But I seconded this motion because it's a yes, and it has the word reasonable in it. And at the end of the day, I think no matter what happens, no matter what we do tonight, we are going to be meeting on February 13th or February 12th with a number, and we're going to have to vote on it, because I do agree with you, Tom, that we can opine on valuation. Like, there's an appraisal out there that library got at $8 million. It's not, we can do it. And the town meeting probably wants us to do it. And they want us to stick our yes vote or our no vote on a number in there. That's why that placeholder is there. So anyways, to wrap it all up, we are going to vote again. And I don't really care if it's a no recommendation or a yes. I just want to convey as strongly as possible as a town meeting, and I think that's what we all want to do, that we're in support of purchasing this land, but we don't have all the information. And whether it's the words yes and reasonable, or it's no comment, but strongly recommend that you buy this land at a reasonable price, I mean, I don't really care. So, anyways.
Steve.
So the warrant committee is obligated to give our opinion or our comments to town meeting members so they can vote on something. I don't feel comfortable now not having this information to say yes. I mean, I don't know what it's going to come in at. And if you think we'll have an opportunity at town meeting or just before to present to the town meeting members that, okay, we changed our mind, we don't think it's a good deal, or yeah, we're in agreement with it, then I'm okay with that, and I'd say I vote yes. But if we don't have that opportunity, then I'd have to vote no right now, or no decision. I mean, we're part of that entire process.
Right. I mean, it's interesting, like, the process. Like, my sense is that, like, if let's say we voted in favor of this motion, and we voted yes, reasonable, I think what we would be doing is saying to the town, kind of like along the lines of what Lorraine is saying, is that we're gonna let you decide what's reasonable. So if that was our vote, my sense is that we probably would not reconvene when the number comes. Because we've already said, yes, negotiate, then the number comes, and then what's reasonable? We might like huddle up as we do before town meeting and say, is anybody so shocked by this number that we need to do something, right? But if we said that's our answer, yes, I mean, right? Because that's if we vote yes, we're voting yes. And like the concern about, what would put us in a bad light is if we voted yes, sort of maybe we'll see. Like if we vote yes, we vote yes. If we vote yes, we're voting, I think, based upon some of the comments that have been made, to trust the select board to come out with a reasonable price, vote yes, and then it's up to the town to decide. All right, and so then if we voted the no comment, then that's when I think we come back again when we have the number to vote on the number. And then instead of saying to the town, authorize a reasonable number, we authorize the dollar and cents number that they had. So that's my sense of how the process would play out. Jay?
Okay, I'm sorry, I feel like I've introduced a lot of chaos to this meeting, and I apologize.
No, but if I may,
don't-
I think I framed it by saying, Jay, that probably the calls here were going to be either vote yes or no comment. So you have brought us around to the yes part of that.
Okay.
So this is,
I think we have to give town meetings something they can agree with, and that something would have to have a dollar amount in it. So that's how I understand the process. So if we vote yes on this today, it is just a placeholder by definition, and we would have to meet later and stick in the number and approve it or not approve it.
but see, the article itself, the article itself doesn't have a number in it. And so it's in the recommendation where we put up, you know, usually we're approving like a number that's ascertained. So we don't run into this situation often, but the article itself is to authorize. It doesn't have a cap. It doesn't have a high, it doesn't have a low. And so then we can put into the recommendation as a comment what we want.
Well, okay, then even if I'm wrong about the facts, still, as Amanda said, what if they come back and the price is 12 million, 15 million, 30 million? Then maybe we'd want to vote no. So
Well, yeah.
So Jay, that's why.
So I thought we wanted.
You know,
Yeah.
because we don't know. They might say it's double. I'm really not in opinion double.
Yeah, I didn't.
I'm not tipping my hat here, but it's just
Yeah.
like that's really why I'm suggesting like really throw the language in there. Right, Warrant Committee is all for this.
Yeah.
But we just don't have that critical piece of information for
Yeah.
you. But so I don't, like I said, I've already had my say. So, like that's my whole point. Just then.
Okay.
One little bit. But Jay, you brought up great.
Is that a
points.
hand?
No, point out here. I'm not doing anything.
I think that, I mean, I can understand the hesitation, and I've also kind of meandered around with how I feel about this, but you know, I do think with the amended language, like the sense I have gotten at every meeting is that there's a general sense that everyone's kind of, or most people are favorable as long as it's a reasonable price. And so I think that language really addresses that and captures how everyone feels. And if, like, let's, again, like I think it, like Tom has said and others have said, like, you know, I kind of am trusting the process and it seems like it's being done appropriately. And taking the time that it needs. So that makes me feel comfortable supporting this with that amended language, because if a number came back that was unreasonable and we like voted and said, like, we voted yes for a reasonable price and this isn't reasonable, like that would carry a lot of weight. But I think, again, like I'm getting the sense there is a general, like, you know, we think they're doing their job and taking this responsibility seriously. And so I think that reasonable price negotiated by the select board really captures the essence of how we're feeling and allows us to get, I think what JJ said earlier was about, you know, like what conveys in the strongest way possible to town meeting that we're generally in favor of this idea. I think if we say no recommendation, some people will read the comments and some people will read no further, and I worry about that.
Judy, you have your hand up.
Okay, I'm gonna keep forgetting that little microphone there. A technical question, please. I don't have a copy of the article to look at right this second, but Jay mentioned making an amendment to the article that was sent to us. The technical question is, how do we amend that?
Right, so it's we would not actually be amending the actual written article. The article as approved by the select board does not have a number in it. It doesn't. So the article itself just simply asks for the town to vote to authorize to purchase. the dollar amount was actually in draft language of the recommendation, because what happens is in the warrant, there's an article, there's the article, which is the article, and then there's the recommendation, which is a further explanation of what the article means, and then we have our comment, which explains sort of our thought process behind it. So
Would Jay be inserting the word reasonable into the comment, or?
Yeah.
I thought I heard him say amend the article.
Yeah,
And I think that's where I'm astray here.
I think he did say that, but I think what he meant was to amend the proposed language of the recommendation so that we would not be
Okay.
amending the article
Okay, so we're
itself.
going to insert the word reasonable in the recommendation, not amend the original article to insert the word reasonable.
Correct, yes.
Correct. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
JJ.
So I do want the ability to opine on the valuation, so I would now switch my opinion to no recommendation and strongly.
Okay. Well,
I mean, that's what I feel, because.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
And so anyways, just to finish, like, no recommendation. And I think people are worried about town meeting members not reading the article. I do not understand this. Like, I'm not a town meeting member, but how long is this paragraph? That's your job. Like,
I have to say that when I see that, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
Like, what are they? No comment?
oh, really? That would prompt you to say it?
Like I said, this is just me. That would push me to want to read it.
But no, not only that, it's going to be a short warrant. There's like 3 or 4 articles. Like, they can't read a paragraph that's strongly worded in favor. And then when we come back, and if it is reasonable, it's going to be a unanimous warrant committee vote. How much stronger can we get for the town to just go up there the day of the meeting and say, by the way, we took the number, it had an appraisal, we voted on it, and we're unanimous or near unanimous. Like, I don't know. That's stronger than doing this yes and then a reasonable, and then we don't get to opine on the valuation, and people are like, do they think this number is reasonable? So I would like to rescind my second.
You can't.
I know, but you know what I mean. I'm not in favor of this.
Sorry. We're not doing this again.
That's fine.
But it's a great, I mean, like I said, we're a mini town meeting. So kind of like how engineering on the Enterprise would change all of their, their estimates of the time that is allotted. Every 1 hour that we spend here is probably 4 hours at town meetings. So it's good to watch this happen. Okay, Amanda.
So I just have a question to that end. So the article is as it's written, and then there's the recommendation with language that's about price and the parcel, et cetera. So to your point, if there's not a price, this article doesn't get voted on, correct? Or does it? Or does it get so I guess that's my question is so say we go this reasonable path, and there's not, what if there isn't, and I know we've talked about this, but my head is swimming now. If there is no price by the time we go to town meeting?
They'll have to have a price to vote on, correct?
But the way it's written, that's, I guess my question is.
Hey, good point.
What we're voting on is as this is written, so if we're voting and they don't have a price, then people are voting to say, yes, we approve this with reasonable language. Am I incorrect? Or, like right now?
Yeah.
So as it's written, we're either saying reasonable, or we're saying we are okay with then, or we're saying we're voting with it, we're approving it with no price.
So the motion that we have now
I'm just trying to understand what I'm voting
is
on.
to approve the Article 3 as it's written. Just says approve the purchase. In the recommendation, draft language had a spot for price. The motion before us now is to edit the price to reasonableness. So what we would be saying if we voted yes, that we would recommend to the town that they purchase the property. Our recommendation is if it's reasonable. So town meeting decides if it's reasonable or not. Now, part of your question was, what if there's no price going into town meeting? I would expect that if there was no price going into town meeting, the town meeting would say no. Because they're in a different situation than we are.
Right, I don't know how to form what I'm thinking, but it was, I think that's I'm trying to understand if we put in reasonable versus no price, there's kind of no difference. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're still, in the sense, not in the way that.
We don't write the recommendation.
No, I know.
We can write comments to it and what we agree with or don't agree and
Yes.
why.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
So I
guess.
don't know why.
Oh, yes, we do.
We can,
Totally, this is ours.
we can edit the recommendation.
We can edit that
We can edit the recommendation because the article, the language of the article that's presented to us is approved by the select board, but we can change our recommendation. So that's something that we could even take out reasonableness.
Why can't we just, like, if this is what we're fighting, talking about for 2 hours,
please.
can we just take out any talk of price and put it in the recommendation, like eliminate when I was looking at it, and just so that we don't even need to bring up, our goal is to move forward in getting this bump on. And maybe in the recommendation, we change it and we say, all based on, when the price comes in, we will then take another.
I don't see a reason not to leave the reasonable price in, because if we take that out, then we're open to the possibility of an unreasonable price. I mean, like saying reasonable price is almost the same as not putting any price in at all.
Okay,
It's like any possible price.
What if we went with the recommendation as it's printed, including the blank, including that blank? Can we do that? Sorry, I'm injecting more chaos.
Go ahead, we have. Haven't we?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, he's got his hand up if you wanna.
there's a motion before the floor that's been seconded, that we've been discussing with regards to the changing of the language of a reasonable price. Is that language really causing, would that language be in as of itself the concern that would sway somebody's vote here? Can we go to a vote on this?
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Oh, Hattie.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I think what is swaying language, what is confusing some of the members, including myself, including me, is your point that this vote is the one and only vote that we would take on this. I want to raise a point of order to that, because I believe you as chair have the right to call a vote anytime there's new information added to any circumstance. That we do not have to live with the vote. This has happened numerous times in any warrant committee. This is not a binding vote for forever and for future about this deal with compound. If new information is introduced, you have the ability and even the duty, some would say, to say, hey, you got some information. JJ, Steve, Jareen, do you guys still think this is a good idea? I think that's basic. I think that was a confusing point. I don't know if you meant it to come out that way, but I think that's a very important clarification. This is not, we're not writing a blank check and they do whatever they want. We have a responsibility, we will fulfill it with the information we've been given. If new information is introduced, it is my expectation that, Mr. Chair, you would not say, well, you voted yes or you voted no last time, and so It is what it is, right? I think what the question at hand is going back to what Lorraine said, and what I think the point you just made, Dave, was that, and Member Gagnon, you also made this point, maybe it's clearer to stay away from the price. They've given us a recommendation. If we support it, support it. Let's not, it is what it is, and then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The only other point I'd make back to you, JJ, is I don't think we should assume how people vote. We keep saying everyone's in support, we all know we're in support. That's why we vote. And we've had many vote day surprises, and many moments when you have to raise your hand on TV to be recorded for posterity, that things change. I don't think we should keep saying, if we want to, I make a motion, we vote, and our Read Supporter bond, you were just putting it out there, and I just wanted to clarify that point, Mr. Chair, if you could clarify that for us, that would be helpful. And then I make the motion that we vote.
Right. So, Henny, you're asking for me to clarify my point on my comment about not having a follow-on vote when we get the price?
Correct.
Right. I think that comment that I made, my intent was along these lines. Is that one of the reasons why we could proceed to a yes vote on Article 3 is to show our strong intention to trust the process and the principles involved in the negotiations to make the deal, to get a number. We're at this point saying that that's what we want to do. One of the big reasons, is to have finality, to be able to say in the warrant, this is our position. We want to have finality. The concern being is that one of the concerns being that is if we have no recommendation, then it puts us in a bad light that we are sort of kicking the can down the road, et cetera. But then, when we get that number, if we have another meeting to assess at that time whether it's reasonable or not, having already decided to give it to the town to decide whether it's reasonable or not, trusting the process, then that erodes sort of the finality of the issue. If we were anticipating that we're going to get back and review for reasonableness, to be able to go back to the town and say, now we have the number, we should review it and decide and tell you what our recommendation is. Is it still the same? That's what the no recommendation thing is doing. That's saying that we don't have the number, we want to review for reasonableness, which is a good word, because that's what we would use. So that's why I'm saying is that my tendency would be is if what our vote is here is for or in favor of Article 3, is to trust them, that they're involved and privy to the conversations that we're not privy to, that we feel comfortable with the process and we want to go forward, make this decision, get it in the warrant, get it to the town, and have that finality. That my sense is that unless the number was really shocking, that we would address it at the town meeting. Right? So that's that. And I hope that clears up any confusion that I called. Okay. I think he also made a motion to go to a vote. Is that moving the previous question? It might be. Okay. Is there any further discussion that we would like to have? Okay, there having been a motion on the motion, it having been seconded, that we vote in favor and approve Article 3 as written, without language describing specific purchase price, but language as a reasonable price negotiated by the select board. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
O'Henny,
Yes.
JJ,
No.
Steve Geister,
No.
Kristen,
No.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Thomas,
No.
Lori,
No.
Allison,
Yes.
Dream,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Judy,
To be clear, we're voting yes or no, and those are the only two choices.
You can abstain.
I would have to say no. Thank you.
Steve Rhines,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Dave.
It's been my policy on this board to abstain and to only vote in the case of a tie, so that I can speak for the warrant committee with regards to the votes that we take. By my tally, I have 8 yeses and 6 nos, with no abstentions. So it would appear that the yeses have it, and the motion carries. So we have voted to approve Article 3, that our recommendation to town meeting is that town meeting should approve Article 3, and that we will be sure that our recommendation reflects this. Emily, you've volunteered, we have to put this comment together quickly. You volunteered before to, right, would you like help?
I would like help.
There's a request for help.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, O'Henny?
could I suggest that we have one of the yes and one of the no voters to help? Just because if there is a need to reflect, this is a close vote, and I think it should be reflected in the comment somehow.
I'll volunteer to help.
Because you were a yes and a no.
I mean, I'll do it. I can speak any way you want to speak on this. But I guess oh, sorry, you saying something?
I'm just saying a third person should be added in the future in the comments.
Before we go there, I just wanted to ask you, like, do we have to say it was a close vote? I feel like that reflects,
It's gonna be in the minutes.
like,
I think-
we're all
I
in
think it was a
favor of
close
it.
vote because-
Like, why, like, if, I don't want my no to count against, I don't know, it's like,
I don't think-
this is craziness to me.
I think that, like, what I think O'Henny is talking about is this is a creative process, in that we want to have a well-balanced, a well-balanced comment. That being said, I think we probably should not put the vote in the comment. It's one of the reasons why I myself am abstaining from these things, so that when it's time as chairperson, right, that I can speak for the warrant committee. There's been criticism of us in the past that we cause confusion with that. I think that one of the things, again, is the concept of finality. We want our final judgment to be a firm one. It's okay for us to be to have close votes or whatever, but at the end of the day, our recommendation is either so. I think that's what O'Henny was really looking for, is this creative process.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that, and I agree with your recommendation.
Dave?
Yes, Judy?
If I could just make a comment. I think what I'm hearing, and maybe it's not true, but it's what I'm feeling myself, so I will express it. I am not, again, we were forced into yes or no. We didn't have the option of no recommendation, but I feel, and speaking for myself, I had to say no because I was really a no recommendation until we get all the information. So by having to say no, it wasn't, try to make any sense, it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted something else, but there wasn't that option.
If I may, I think that
Can you help me with this?
I think you're probably not alone. I mean, this is how it goes. I mean, I think that it's not a binary situation, but it's close. Like the calculus on this vote is not that complicated.
But it makes us look like we're against the school and we're against purchasing the property, and when in reality,
I think the record is clear.
Yeah.
I think the record is clear.
I was fine with just, because it said reasonable, so it's like, I mean.
It's like, I think, you know, so part of my, I think that Lorraine kind of sums it up. Like, that's the Excedrin headache. Remember that old commercial? It's, you know, like, we've gone around and around and around, and I think that it all sounds, we're all not, well, there's a strong direction in favor of this from this committee, a strong direction. And then the question was due diligence. Is at what point are we comfortable of due diligence? It also keeping in mind that we're not the final arbiter of this. The town is, the town meeting is. And so this is set up, and we're recommending purchase of this. We're recommending, you know, reasonable price under the time constraints that we have. That's where we're at. And so I don't think that we are passing the buck, because the issues that will be presented to the town will be the same ones here. There will be a price, and ultimately that's their call. So.
Okay, thank you. I just hated to be hemmed in like that.
If I could just add, and I know the feelings. I know last year there was one vote where like we couldn't have a majority for anything because people had lots of different kind of views on something. I think that's one of the reasons why it's important that we not, I'm going to say, go there in the comment about what the breakdown of the vote is, because I think it's like if we were to say it was like X number saying yes and X and Y saying no, that leads to people reading it and saying like, oh, like 6 people were against it. That's where I think it's just another reason to stay away from going into that territory, because I think that contributes to people making assumptions about like what a no vote meant.
It'll be in our meeting minutes.
Exactly, yeah. So I think, and that's where it's just like, I mean, there are other things too where it came up that it's like, well, if you start putting breakdowns in one, people will read into it if it's not listed in another. But I think just like, as long as we keep that out of the comment, it prevents people from like making assumptions from why you voted a certain way.
Tom.
Yeah, just a comment, Emily. I agree. I mentioned this a couple of meetings ago before the last town meeting. When you put those breakdowns in, it just causes total confusion. And this is like a relatively new thing I've seen with these like breakdowns, and I do not find them helpful when I'm like reviewing, trying to figure out like. And then looking at people in the Warrant committee wondering like what precinct they're in. I mean, it just snowballs.
Yes,
you know?
and I would add to that like when I've written comments in the past, in isolation, if I was working on one where it was unanimous, I was like, oh, just like I've seen it in others, I'll throw it in. And then this year when I've seen them collectively, I'm like, this is a disaster. Like it's mentioned here, it's true here, but not like, it's just, yeah, a place that I think we should stay away from now that we've kind of recognized the chaos that it causes.
Okay. Do you think, are we in a place where we can talk minutes, or?
They're not on the agenda. So
Got it.
I think we need to.
Thank you for that.
And I would say it doesn't make sense to just have a meeting tomorrow.
Oh,
since
right.
It's a late night, so.
Right. Okay. So we had a scheduled meeting for tomorrow night. We're not going to meet, right? Because that was held, we scheduled that in order to give them more time to give us a number, okay? We don't have any scheduled meetings now, but they are going to start coming, and they're going to start coming fast and furious when we start getting budgets, okay? And so generally, like our nights, as we come to learn here at the town hall, is Mondays and Wednesdays. So you can just kind of keep that in mind, is that, our nights are Mondays and Wednesdays. And we can't anticipate, there's likely to be a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as we get close to finalizing the annual town meeting warrant, because there's something on the order of like 2,000 articles that we have to go through each and every one. Okay?
Do we avoid vacation, and can we avoid?
Yes, right. So yes, we will avoid school vacation, and we will avoid Saturdays, unless it becomes a legal holiday, then we'll meet on the preceding Friday.
Is that paid time?
For the school budget, their evenings
that's funny.
seem to be
That's
Tuesdays
funny.
and, I think Tuesdays for availability, so I think we'll probably be looking at a Tuesday for the school budget.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Henny.
Committee assignments, if we're not meeting for a while, have we finalized the committee assignments?
Right.
And will the list be released?
I have those. I'll create a spreadsheet or something like that. Again, if you requested a subcommittee assignment, assume that you're on it. If you requested like 6, some people are like, I'll be on any of these 6, assume that you'll be on 2 of them. I'll get that out. We still don't have the budget yet.
Oh, perfect. I know, just going into.
Right,
that.
so, but schools is working on it.
Yep.
I believe the budget binders for the schools are ready.
Get ready.
So I'll check how they're gonna be showing up, but it sounds like they're ready.
Okay, so it's late for us on the warrant committee.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Emily.
Can I just go back to the comment for Article 3, just because I did have some stuff come up from work, so I just want to make sure I have some help. JJ, you said you're awesome. Thank you.
And I did send the comments for Article 2, 3 different versions. Look at the third one. I wrote it first, and then Rick updated it, and Leroy updated it, and I think it's very good. It's pretty lengthy, but I think it's well written and documented what he presented to us very well.
Perfect, so it's your recommendation that, so you're saying that your comment's ready to go?
Yep.
Good, I read it, it looks great to me.
Okay, I can send it out to everybody if anybody else wants to look at it.
But the most important one is Karen.
So I can give it to me.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
Right, thank you.
Just to give it to me. I'm not-
Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
He's running out the door.
Is there anyone opposed to this motion? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.